Wow, this week you've really brought us some interesting stuff with this whole U.S. government strategic crypto reserve thing.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable how this has developed so quickly.
Yeah, I mean we've got like actual news reports and we've got strong opinions being thrown around publicly, and markets are already reacting in pretty significant ways.
Absolutely. It's kind of hard to ignore the kind of impact this is having.
Yeah, so let's just start at the very beginning.
Okay, sure.
We've got President Trump announcing this U.S. strategic crypto reserve.
Right.
And it's not just like him, sort of casually mentioning it. This seems to be like a direct result of the work done by the Presidential Working Group on Digital Asset Markets.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the group that was established through an executive order, which, suggests that this is something they've been planning for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
I mean, an executive order carries a lot of weight,
Right.
It's coming directly from the presidential level. So it shows that this was definitely identified as a key objective for the administration.
Right. And we can't really ignore Eric Trump's, pretty vocal support for this whole thing.
He's certainly been enthusiastic.
Yeah, he's been really pushing this, pretty forceful, actually urging Wall Street to, embrace crypto or die, which is pretty spelk, I would say.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong ultimatum.
Right.
It definitely suggests a belief that traditional financial institutions, they're going to be left behind if they don't adapt to the rise of digital assets.
Mm.
And his perspective is kind of a binary one. You either adapt or you become irrelevant.
Right. And what I found interesting, too, is, his focus on, like, who he sees as benefiting from this.
Yeah.
He's framing it as a huge win for retail investors.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's going to somehow democratize finance.
Right.
And he even called the timing of the announcement, like, genius.
Right.
They announced it on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And he seemed to think that was really, really smart. What do you think about that?
Well, the Sunday timing is interesting, I think, for a few reasons.
Mm.
Firstly, it lets the crypto markets kind of react to the news first,
Right.
before the traditional markets open on Monday morning. Cryptocurrency markets operate 24/7.
Right.
So it gives that community a bit of a head start on, digesting and responding to the information.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, it's also a symbolic gesture,
Yeah.
kind of a deliberate step outside of those typical weekday financial news cycles, like suggesting this new era is dawning on a different schedule almost.
Right. So they're really trying to make a statement with that Sunday announcement.
It seems so.
Okay, so we've got a sense of, the announcement, the kind of people behind it and who might benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
But what exactly would this strategic crypto reserve look like? What would be in it? Initial reports specifically mention XRP, SOL, and AD.
Yeah, you're right. Those were the three cryptocurrencies specifically highlighted in the initial reports.
Right.
But further information has come out since then, suggesting that Bitcoin and Ethereum are going to be included as well.
Okay.
And they're actually considered central to the reserve.
So it's not just going to be those three, it's going to be Bitcoin and Ethereum as well.
Exactly. So if we're keeping track, that's Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Solana, and Cardano.
Wow, that's quite a diverse mix.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you've got the two largest ones by market cap, Bitcoin and Ethereum, but you've also got XRP, which is kind of traditionally focused on making cross-border payments easier, Solana, which is known for its speed, handling lots of transactions quickly, and Cardano, which has always emphasized research and a careful development approach.
So they're really taking a multi-pronged approach here with the different types of crypto they're including.
Absolutely. It seems like they're trying to cover a lot of bases.
Okay, so now let's dig a bit deeper into, why they're doing this. What are the arguments in favor of having a strategic crypto reserve in the first place?
Sure.
I mean, we've touched on the whole embracing the future of finance thing.
Right. Well, that's definitely a core argument. Proponents see digital assets as a fundamental shift in how financial systems will work. It's not just a fad in their view. So by creating this reserve, the U.S. government is essentially saying, we see this change happening, we recognize it, and we want to be a leader in this new landscape.
Right. So they're trying to position themselves at the forefront of this whole movement.
Exactly. They want to be seen as proactive rather than reactive.
And there's also that narrative that this is, a positive change in how the government is approaching the crypto industry, especially after, what the current administration sees as negative actions from the previous one.
Right. Well, yeah, they're framing this as a way to rectify any perceived past missteps.
Right.
Maybe they think there was a hostile stance toward crypto before, and now they want to create a more supportive environment. one that's friendly to innovation in this space.
So they're trying to paint themselves as the good guys.
In a way, yes.
Right. And we talked about Eric Trump and how he's presenting this as something that will empower the everyday investor, right?
Right.
Like it's going to give people more access to and control over their financial future.
Yeah, that idea of empowering retail investors really resonates within the crypto community.
Right.
It's about democratizing finance, making it so people don't have to rely so heavily on those traditional financial institutions. And by creating this reserve, the government is sort of aligning itself with that goal.
Okay, so the Sunday announcement, I mean, it keeps coming up.
It was definitely a calculated move.
Yeah, it was clearly intentional, but beyond just the initial market reaction, do you think there was like a deeper symbolic meaning to that timing?
I think there might have been.
Like what?
Well, announcing a big financial policy decision like this outside of regular business hours could be a way of saying, we're not playing by the old rules anymore.
Right.
It might be a way of embracing a more continuous, globally accessible financial system, one that's not limited to, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
So it's like a signal that they're breaking away from the traditional way of doing things.
Exactly. They're signaling a new era.
Okay, so the announcement is made. Eric Trump is all over social media about it. And how does the crypto market react? Sounds like things got kind of crazy.
Oh, yeah. Things definitely got a bit volatile.
So what happened?
Well, the initial reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Reports showed Bitcoin jumped up 10%, Ethereum went up 13%, and Cardano saw a massive surge over 60%. Clearly, there was a lot of optimism and buying activity following the news.
Wow, so everyone was excited.
At least initially.
But then we've got this analysis from Binance Square talking about a $10,000 door painting kill in Bitcoin. What is that exactly? It sounds pretty intense.
Yeah, it definitely does.
What does door painting even mean in trading?
Well, door painting is basically a term traders use to describe these really rapid and huge price fluctuations, Like the price swings so wildly and so quickly that it can trap traders who bet in the wrong direction, leading to, some pretty big losses.
Okay, so it can be a real problem for people who are, trying to time the market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a $10,000 swing in Bitcoin's price within, short period definitely qualifies as one of those volatile door painting events.
Wow, so things got really messy.
They did.
And the Binance Square analysis goes on to suggest that Eric Trump's activity on social media might have actually contributed to this volatility.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
I mean, how could his posts have that much impact?
Well, the cryptocurrency market is really sensitive. And, often driven by sentiment, particularly when you have a major announcement like this strategic reserve, right?
Right.
So when influential figures like Eric Trump start making pronouncements, it can have a kind of amplified effect on the market, So if his social media activity was interpreted as trying to influence market movements, giving people trading signals, even if they're informal,
right?
Especially since the analysis mentioned his father, the president, shouting orders, it could easily exacerbate those price swings and contribute to that door painting volatility.
Yeah. That makes sense. I guess people are looking to those kinds of figures for guidance, even if it's not explicitly given.
Absolutely. People look for clues wherever they can find them.
So that raises some questions about, the power of influence and the potential for manipulation.
It certainly does.
Which leads us to some of the concerns and skepticism surrounding this whole initiative. Adam Blumberg from Enclave Group, he voiced some pretty serious reservations.
Yeah, he did. He had some fundamental concerns about the whole idea of the government owning these decentralized assets.
Right, because cryptocurrencies were created to be, independent from central authority.
Exactly.
To give individuals more control over their own finances.
Right, and that's his point. He's saying government ownership by its very nature creates this central point of control, which contradicts that core principle of decentralization.
Right.
And he also raises a valid point about the potential for shifts in government policy when a new administration comes in.
Yeah, that's always a concern with politics.
There's always that cyclical nature to it, What one administration does, the next might completely undo.
Right.
So there's no guarantee of long-term consistency.
And the Binance Square analysis also expressed some caution, right? They questioned whether this is truly a strategic reserve meant for long-term holding or whether it could be used to manipulate the market. They even used the term scythe, which is a pretty powerful image.
Yeah, scythe definitely conjures up the image of something destructive, right?
Yeah.
They're suggesting that the true motives behind the reserve might not be so simple.
Right.
It might not just be about strategic holding. It could be about using the reserve to control market prices,
Right.
by buying or selling large amounts of crypto at strategic times.
So they're not convinced that the government's intentions are entirely pure.
They're definitely raising some red flags.
So we have these two sides, the optimistic view of embracing the future of finance and empowering individuals, and then the more cautious perspective focused on potential government overreach and market manipulation.
It's a complex issue, no doubt about it.
And to make things even more interesting, the Binance Square analysis pointed to some upcoming events that we should be watching.
Right. They highlighted a few key things on the horizon.
Starting with President Trump's first congressional speech since he came back to the White House, right?
Exactly. That was expected to happen pretty soon after the initial announcement.
But the analysis didn't seem to think he would talk a lot about crypto in that speech.
They didn't think it would be a major focus.
Yeah, they thought it was more likely to be about things like tariffs, immigration, and the situation with Ukraine.
Right. The big picture stuff.
So they weren't expecting much immediate market movement as a result of that speech.
Not directly, no.
Oh?
Though you could never completely rule out a brief mention of economic policy, which might touch on digital assets.
Right. There's always that possibility.
But the general consensus was that it wouldn't be a major catalyst for price movements.
Okay, but there was a lot more anticipation surrounding a White House Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Conference, right?
Oh, yeah. That was a big one. Supposedly scheduled for around March 7th.
And that sounded like it was going to be a much more focused event on cryptocurrency.
Absolutely. I mean, the name itself tells you that.
Right.
And the anticipation was pretty high. The Binance Square analysis suggested that it could be a real turning point for the market, maybe catalyst for some big moves.
And the fact that it was scheduled around the same time as the non-farm payroll data release didn't help, did it?
No, not at all. That just added to the potential for volatility.
Right, because that data is always closely watched by the markets.
Exactly. So you've got these two major events happening around the same time, potentially creating this perfect storm of market activity.
And the analysis even mentions some speculative predictions.
Oh, yeah, some bold forecasts.
Like Bitcoin potentially reaching $100,000.
That's a huge number.
It is. So where were they getting that from?
Well, I think it was a combination of factors.
Like what?
Well, the positive sentiment surrounding the strategic reserve announcement, obviously. The fact that the White House was holding a conference dedicated to this signaled that the government was taking it seriously.
Right.
And then you had those broader macroeconomic influences reflected in things like the non-farm payroll data. But it's important to remember that it's still speculation. There are just too many factors at play to say for sure what will happen.
So it's a possibility, but not a guarantee.
Exactly.
The analysis also mentioned the possibility of a broader market rebound in early March.
They did.
Was that directly linked to these Trump administration events?
Well, they suggested that after a period of decline, we might see what they called a retaliatory rally in the first week of March.
Okay.
So it could be influenced by the strategic reserve news, the anticipation of the conference, or maybe just a natural market correction, after a period of going down.
So it's hard to say for sure what the driving force would be.
Right. It could be any one of those things or a combination of them.
Okay. And finally, the Binance Square analysis gave us some technical analysis insights for Bitcoin and Ethereum.
They did.
What were the key levels they were watching?
Well, for Bitcoin, the analyst said that as long as the price stayed above $82,000, the expectation was for a rebound up towards $91,500.
Okay.
But they also cautioned that if it breaks below that $82,000 mark, well, that could signal a change in the outlook.
And what about Ethereum?
For Ethereum, the analysis suggested that it would probably be difficult for the price to drop below the $2,000 support level.
Okay.
And if Bitcoin starts to move up, they thought Ethereum might follow suit and rebound towards that $2,150 to $2,200 range.
So those were their kind of short-term price targets based on their reading of the charts and, market trends.
Yeah, but that's technical analysis in a nutshell.
Right. Okay. Wow, we've covered a lot.
We have.
So just to quickly recap for you, the listener. The U.S. government under President Trump has announced that they're going to create this strategic crypto reserve. And this has strong support from people like Eric Trump, who thinks that traditional finance really has to adapt to this growing importance of digital assets. This reserve is supposed to include Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Solana, and Cardano. Now, the initial reaction was positive markets went up. But There are also concerns about the government having control over these assets, which were designed to be decentralized.
Right, and the motivations behind the initiative aren't entirely clear.
Exactly. And now we have these upcoming events like that White House conference that are being closely watched because they could really shake things up in the market.
Definitely. It's a situation that's still very much in flux.
Yeah, so it's really interesting to see, this optimistic view of, embracing the future of finance and empowering individuals. And at the same time, there are these worries about government overreach and market manipulation.
Right. Those concerns are definitely legitimate.
And then you've got all this market volatility happening, right?
It's hard to predict where things are going to go from here.
It really is. So as you consider all of this, both sides of the argument and the fact that prices are swinging wildly, what does this establishment of a government crypto reserve really mean for the future of decentralized finance? What does it mean for individual investors like you? I mean, is this a big step towards broader acceptance of digital assets? Are they finally becoming integrated into the financial system?
Right.
Or could this be a point of conflict where the government tries to take more control over the crypto space?
It's a question worth thinking about.
It really is. It's a complex situation with a lot of potential outcomes.
Definitely. A lot to keep an eye on.
It is. It's definitely a multifaceted development. So thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
My pleasure.
It's been really fascinating.
It has.
And we'll definitely be keeping an eye on how this unfolds.
Me too. I think we all should.
Okay. Until next time, thanks for listening.